Hi all, I'd like to show you an interesting game played in the Zurich Rapid part of the challenge, and the Zurich Rapid have the time limit of 15 minutes with a 10-second increment per move. I think Aronian had described this as far more relaxing than the raw 25 minutes which is usually associated with rapid games without any increment. So with the 10-second increments you can expect endgames to be better, etc. A bit less pressure if you can play the moves. Okay, so Boris Gelfand playing white played Magnus Carlsen in the first round of the rapid, and we saw d4. Magnus chose knight f6. After c4, we didn't see a Nxd5 Indian, but rather a different opening. And I think the openings are geared up for the particular time control, and even the very style of play which the opening statement makes is kind of all dictated logically from the time control. And here Magnus is very adventurous. He plays c5, and after d5 he's not as adventurous to try a modern Benoni. The problem with the modern Benoni at all times is that sometimes it is a losing liability on d6, but generally I think the longer the time control, the more kind of solid openings are chosen without so many potentially losing liabilities. Here though, b5 is a bit of a risky gambit, the Benko gambit, but I don't think as risky as the modern Benoni actually. So c takes b5, Boris takes the pawn, a6. Magnus is playing this gambit, and he has played this gambit quite successfully when he was much younger, even against grandmasters. I think there's a famous game he was quite significantly down in the game against, I think it was Simon Ashdean, and he managed to come back. So it does promise good piece play. That is one thing going for the Benko gambit. And at this time control, I think it's particularly effective if opponents sometimes slip up. So knight c3, bishop g7, e4, and we'll look at opening book for the moment. The main move here is actually d6 immediately. Magnus played castling here. I think e5 is not so good. It looks as though d6 was an omission, but usually players with white play knight f3 here. I think on e5 the knight can go back. It's not such a bad position, this position here. So let's see. Knight f3 was actually played, but now usually d6 is definitely played here. I have 53 games in live book with d6. Tries to put the brakes on e5 here. Magnus instead chose queen a5, second used, but only 6 games. And usually players with white just respond with bishop d2. So this is very interesting now. We'll put on a Gambits. Boris chose a continuation, maybe intentionally, to try and get some sort of strong initiative against black's king. So bishop d3, very provocative continuation, implying actually an exchange sacrifice, basically, because now it is actually encouraging Magnus to win material with knight takes d5. So the point here is now after e takes d5, bishop takes c3 check, and if white just wants to be a little bit worse, then bishop d2 or knight d2 technically. But white's idea, I think, is just to sacrifice the exchange, at least here. B takes c, queen takes c3 check, and to offer the rook now with queen d2. In return, white's getting potentially strong initiative against black's king, and this is also, this is a kind of showing, is Magnus's opening backfiring here because of his dark square weaknesses, which may become apparent soon. So let's see, how can Magnus take this rook and stay on the board? Well, he does take the rook. There's nothing else here. White castles. So white is immediately threatening bishop b2 just to control that diagonal, and then queen h6 after looks to be very, very destructive here. And what does black do? Well, that actually is a very cool move that's played in this position. The simple move is also maybe it's okay just to put the queen back here, and black would be under a little bit of pressure here though. After say d6, you can see that white is actually got what looks to be an easier to play position here. This very fine bishop on the diagonal. The queen's kind of a bit passive here, but you know, technically the engines kind of think it's okay for black, but I think this is the sort of position which often does, you know, well for the attacking player, the player which has the easier to play position in the faster time limits. Things can go sometimes easily wrong for black in this sort of position. But nevertheless, Queen G7 looks to be a viable move. Magnus actually chose another viable move, though. Magnus took on A6. So he's giving his queen actually A2. And this is very, very interesting. It is actually enough at the moment, it seems, to do this. So bishop B2, queen takes A2, and this eyes D5 as well. And you might think, is that the idea? Well, after rook A1 now is played, I think queen takes D5 would represent a major mistake here. If queen takes D5, it looks attractive. It's like pinning the bishop to the queen, but there's queen C3 here, threatening mate. And if say F6, then actually white has a very interesting position now after rook takes A6, because the idea is bishop C4 to exploit that F6, that diagonal. So if knight takes, we just skewer the queen, and white would be well back in the game here. Actually, I think better practical chances now, even though well, it looks to be good chances for white. Let's just say that. So rook A1. Actually, Magnus played a move which actually avoids the whole queen C3. He's not greedy for the pawn here. He actually plays queen B3, and now D3 is under scrutiny here. What does white actually do here? It seems quite a tricky position. It seems, for example, if queen H6, we just snap up the bishop. It's harmless. There's nothing going on here. There's not enough time for any knight G5. The back row's weak. Rook F1. I think we don't worry about this because we've always got queen G7. So there's nothing going on there. So the bishop, does it really want to take on A6? Not really. Rook takes A6 is sufficient for black here. And again, king safety is not really a concern. So Boris actually decided to play bishop E4, and actually this preserves the threat of trying to attack the queen and try and do something with a discovered attack on the queen. Magnus is cool as a cucumber in this position. He plays actually the move D6, and I think this is one of the finest moves in the position. And white pursues this. I mean, what else can white do here? He pursues this attack potentially on the queen. And it looks as though queen H6 is quite a significant threat now. It's not just about moving the bishop, it's just about queen H6 as well to threaten mate. For example, let's see a disaster scenario. If black now plays knight D7, queen H6, so we're threatening mate on G7. And if, say, knight F6, then actually we can just take, and we've got the mate threat, and we've got the queen attacked. This is a disaster. And there's actually no access to the back row immediately. It's all covered. So what does black want to play in this position? If he played, F6, this, pardon me, F6 is played, not F6. F5, this looks as though this might just be okay for black. So anyway, black has to trade carefully. If queen C4 is another example, just to get out of the potential attack, then queen H6 demonstrates the fierce pressure and what can go wrong. Here, F6, there's bishop takes G6, threatening mate on H7, takes. And here you might think, well, isn't this just a draw by perpetual? No, actually, knight G5 is crushing, it seems, in this position. So we've got this mate threat here, and if rook f7, queen takes is mating. Actually, like this, for example. So it's important. That shows it's important. This move f6 to play here. It's a very tricky position without either f6 or f5. So queen c4. It does look as though queen h6. I mean, what else is there apart from f6 here? So this would be destructive. So anyway, f6 is played. It's a very, very strong move. And Boris gets a bit carried away here with the discovered attack on the queen. It is a difficult position. Possibly best is to try and undermine black's king structure with h4. This wasn't played, and say knight d7 h5, but it's still significantly better for black. Rook fb8, and if queen h6 here, it starts to look a bit dangerous, but maybe knight f5 now. Knight g5 on h7, it gets a bit hairy, to say the least. And black would actually need a precise move in this position to avoid slaughter time. There is a precise move in this position in bishop d3. So if hg, what is white doing here? If knight e6, threatening mate, we can just snap that off. If takes here, there's no problem, we just take. It's all gone really. Hg, we can just take that. Queen takes, we can actually play knight g7. It's all defendable, it seems, after bishop d3. That would be a key move. Let's just have a quick look at that at the end there. I thought there was something. After hg, queen g, there was queen h7, pardon me, king f8, queen check here, king f7, and the point is now, yeah, that it's not really working out this situation for white. The attack's just gone there. So anyway, let's go back. In the game we see f6, and Boris actually played bishop takes f6, and this ruins his attacking potential. Even that variation, I think, reflected the strongest attacking potential. Magnus now has a very good move. Can you spot it if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Okay, he actually played queen c4, so he's addressing this threat of his queen, and it was also hitting the loose bishop now, and this bishop's also being attacked. Whatever white does, I think white's in big trouble here. Let's say queen h6, we just take, I think maybe we can even take with the rook. No, actually we need to be careful here about knight g5. The engine choice is actually e takes, which makes it look easy to defend such positions. And remarkably here, so it doesn't defend g6. You might think that's a paradox. Why isn't rook f6 better? But bishop g6, there's actually a fantastic defensive move in this position. I wonder if you can see it. If I give you 10 seconds here, this is a remarkable defensive move which would be needed, but one which is enough. Okay, black has actually rook a7, and that defends. So it starts to defend. So bishop f5 can take, and the attack's dwindling. So, but yeah, it does seem as though queen h6 at least sets that as a trap. You know, that rook takes f6 now. This apparently is not good for black. So this is a kind of disaster. Knight g5. You see, the problem is here that the rook's not able to contact h7 even if it wants to because of the pawn, but also because the knight is loose. And how do we defend actually h7? If rook f7, the crushing move here would be bishop takes g6. And this is all over again for black, this position. If rook g7 we just take here, and then bishop g6 we're threatening queen, we're threatening horrible things. Knight e6, queen h8, and there's actually no real defense. So like this, bishop f7, queen h8, or rook takes f7, queen g6, and then this needs queen e8. So anyway, I think we can see that actually queen h6 is a good try here in this position. It would have been an interesting try, to say the least, to see if Magnus would play e takes. But there is this just cunning resource for defending after bishop g6 to play rook a7 with b8 held, because the rook hasn't left b8. It's amazing. But you know, the defensive resources do seem to be here after e takes, just depriving the knight of knight g5 as well. This wasn't played. I mean, any other tries here? It seems a shame as though White's creative rook sacrifice has not worked. But bishop takes, I think we just mop up White with queen takes e4. And then there's nothing to speak of really. So actually, in this position, Boris just played bishop b2. I mean, queen h6 is at least a try for a trap. After this, it's just Magnus just took on e4, hitting the rook, and it's all over really. Or is it? You see, Boris had a final trick to try and get the rook to the 7th rank to coordinate with the bishop. How is this defended? Let's see. Rook e1. Now here, okay, can black still go wrong here? And this may explain, you know, Boris's choice. If queen f5, actually queen f5 is a little trap as well. You know, rook takes e7, and this is now tricky for black. How does black actually defend this? If rook f7 we got, you know, check, and actually queen c3. This is actually very problematic indeed. Check here. We just play knight e1, and it's all over for black. So actually, Boris's idea does set some final traps here. So queen f5, rook takes e7. It seems tricky. And for black to have anything going on here, there's a couple of moves. Check, knight e1, rook a7. This is crazy. That defends g7. And we've got this very resourceful defense, where White's actually still slightly better though. So forget all this queen f5 business anyway. In this position, what other alternatives would be interesting? Queen f5, you know, held onto b1 though, so I don't think there's anything that great. But Magnus played actually one of the strongest moves in the position according to engines. Another idea is queen b4 after rook takes e7. This is still okay for black, believe it or not, because we're on the bishop. There's no major discovered check. And in this position, mind you, this would require an ingenious defense to save this position. Actually, I don't think anyone's going to spot it if I asked you 10 seconds here. How would you save black here from this threat of rook takes g6? It's actually quite amazing. Black can save himself in this position with a remarkable move to stop this rook g6 mating. This is a nice puzzle in itself. Very, very interesting. Save black puzzle from being mated horribly. You might want to pause the video. Okay, I'm going to show you. Knight c6. So the idea is the knight's in contact with d4, e5. So we can play actually knight d4 is best to avoid f4, and black's winning that. And if the pawn takes, then we've got a chance now to hit that bishop. But that's not the main point actually. The main point here is d5 to stop the bishop with d4. It's an amazing defense. But anyway, Magnus doesn't want to play queen b4. No, he's got a stronger move here. So he plays an amazing move which makes like White's conception look really silly. He played queen d3 actually. Queen d3. And rook e7 is now prevented. If rook e7, there's a nasty, you can see it, I hope. 5 seconds. Queen f1 mate. Beautiful. It stops this invasion to the 7th rank with such a drastic punishment. What can Boris do here? If he tries queen h6, let's go for this. Actually, in this position, rook f7. And you might think, well, hold on. What about knight g5? Let's have a look at knight g5. It's got a snag. This has got a snag to it in queen d2. Not only attacking the rook, but also usefully pinning the knight. So where does the rook want to go? If rook f1, queen e2, hitting the rook, threatening mate. If the rook moves now, then queen takes f2 as mating. So that's hopeless, that position. There's no tricks there left. So after queen takes d3, it looks as though queen h6 is pretty much doomed to just rook f7. There might be some other moves, but rook f7 is also good. e5 is another move which guarantees black an okay position and okay defense with this tricky rook a7. So black's okay there as well. So anyway, after queen d3, Boris took on d3, played bishop. Magnus took bishop takes d3. Now rook takes e7 still presents a final tactical problem to solve, but actually there are numerous options for black in this position which will do quite well, very nicely. One is simply rook f5. So if check, we can just play this. If taking here, it's no big deal. You know, even rook h5 now is possible. Magnus actually just played rook takes f3, and after g takes, just calmly played knight a6. It's no big deal, this final check. Boris actually resigned here. Magnus is a piece up. If check, king f8, rook takes does threaten rook h8 to win the rook, but we can defend that neatly with rook b8 and also hit the bishop. So the knight's defending the rook here, and there's nothing much going on. The checks kind of run out. I think the king can just make his way like this out of the checks. So basically, yeah, it was resigned earlier. Yeah, just after rook takes and knight a6. Here, Boris resigned. So yeah, there's some dramatic, very dramatic, powerful attacking themes to explore in this seemingly quite straightforward game, but there's a lot of things that Magnus stopped with his very precise moves. Amazing for a rapid game, you know, just 15 minutes each with 10-second increments. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.